Jake Morrison pressed his back against the cold metal wall and listened to the footsteps echoing through the mining station corridor. His breathing was steady, despite the sweat running down his face. The laser rifle in his hands felt warm from recent use. 3 alien guards lay unconscious behind him, their strange purple blood pooling on the floor. The asteroid mining station looked like a nightmare. Human workers moved like zombies between the machines, their eyes empty and broken. Alien overseers with scaly green skin and yellow eyes watched them work. Tall elves with pointed ears stood nearby, their faces showing no emotion as humans collapsed from exhaustion. Jake had come here to find Amy Rodriguez, a human engineer who had been captured 3 weeks ago. The message he received said she was being held in this place, forced to work on some secret project. He could not let that happen. Humans did not leave their own behind. The mining operation was bigger than he expected. Tunnels went deep into the asteroid, filled with machines that pulled rare metals from the rock. The aliens called themselves the Saurian Dominion. The elves were from something called the Zephyrian Empire. Together, they had made a deal to take over human colonies and steal everything valuable. Jake moved through the shadows, his boots making no sound on metal floor. He had learned to be quiet during his years as a mercenary. The corridor ahead split into 2 paths. One led to the main reactor room, the other to the prison cells. He chose the prison path first, that the cells were full of humans. Men and women sat on the floor, their clothes torn and dirty. Some were crying, others just stared at nothing. Jake felt anger burning in his chest. These aliens thought they could break human spirit. They were wrong. He found Amy in the last cell. She looked up when she saw him, her brown eyes wide with surprise. "Jake," she whispered, "how did you find me?" "Your sister never gave up looking," Jake said as he worked on the electronic lock. "Neither did I." The lock clicked open. Amy stood up on shaky legs. "There are others," she said. "A scientist named Kira Blackwood. They make her work on weapons. And there are more humans in the deep tunnels." Jake nodded. "We will get them all out. But first, we need to disable their power systems." They moved back toward the reactor room. The corridor was longer than Jake remembered. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls. Somewhere behind them, an alarm started ringing. The unconscious guards had been found. The reactor room was huge. Glowing tubes filled with blue energy reached from floor to ceiling. Computer screens showed numbers and graphs that Jake could not understand. But he knew enough about reactors to know where to place his explosives. "Stop right there, human." The voice came from the doorway. Jake turned around slowly, keeping his hands visible. A female elf stood there, tall and graceful with silver hair that seemed to glow in the reactor light. She wore black armor that looked both beautiful and deadly. In her hands were 2 curved blades that hummed with energy. "Lirelai Moonwhisper," she said, as if introducing herself at a dinner party. "I have been watching your work tonight. Very impressive explosions in the storage bay. Quite artistic, really." Jake kept his face calm. "Thanks. I try to make them pretty." The elf smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "You humans are strange creatures. You make jokes even when you are about to die." "Who says I am about to die?" Jake asked. He could see Amy hiding behind one of the reactor tubes. Good. She was safe for now. Lirelai moved closer, her blades ready to strike. "You are outnumbered and outgunned. Your rescue mission has failed. Surrender now, and I promise your death will be quick." Jake looked around the reactor room. The glowing tubes, the computer controls, the emergency systems. An idea formed in his mind. It was crazy and dangerous, but it might work. "You know what?" Jake said, reaching into his jacket. "I have a better idea." Lirelai tensed, ready to attack. But Jake did not pull out a weapon. Instead, He pulled out a small device with a red button. A dead man switch. His thumb hovered over. This is connected to charges I placed all around your reactor, Jake said. If I let go, this whole station goes boom. That includes you, me, and everyone else on board. The elf's eyes narrowed. You are bluffing. Am I? Jake grinned. Want to find out? For a moment, neither of them moved. The reactor hummed around them, its blue light making everything look unreal. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. He could see doubt in the elf's eyes. Then the lights flickered. The reactor made a strange sound, like a giant animal groaning. Jake had not activated his explosives yet, but something was wrong with the power systems. What did you do? Lirelei demanded. Jake looked at the computer screens. The numbers were changing, getting higher. I think your friends in the control room are having problems, he said. Looks like the reactor is overloading. The elf looked at the screens and her face went pale. That is impossible. Our systems are perfect. Nothing is perfect, Jake said. Especially when someone plants a virus in your computers 3 hours ago. Lirelei stared at him. You planned this. I planned to rescue humans and hurt your operation, Jake said. The reactor thing is just a bonus. The groaning sound got louder. More lights flickered. An automated voice started speaking in the alien language, probably warning about the overload. Lirelei looked between Jake and the reactor controls. If the reactor explodes, it will destroy this entire asteroid. Thousands will die. Then I guess we better fix it, Jake said. Together. The elf looked shocked. You would trust me? Right now, I do not have much choice, Jake said. And neither do you? Lirelei thought for a moment, then put away her blades. The main control is over there, she said, pointing to a large console. I will need your virus codes to reverse what you did. They worked side by side, human and elf, their hands, moving over the controls. Jake gave her the codes she needed while she explained the alien technology. The reactor slowly came back under control. When the danger passed, they stood facing each other again. But something had changed. They had saved lives together, even if they were enemies. Why did you help? Lirelei asked. Jake shrugged. Because innocent people would have died. I do not care if they are human, elf, or alien. Innocent is innocent. Before Lirelei could respond, heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. Alien soldiers were coming. Jake reached for his weapon, but the elf was faster. Her blade touched his throat. I am sorry, she said quietly, but I have my orders. Jake smiled even with the blade at his neck. Yeah, he said. I figured as much. The soldiers surrounded them. Jake let his weapon fall to the floor and raised his hands. Amy was captured too, pulled from her hiding place behind the reactor dock as they led him away. Jake caught Lirelei's eye. She looked confused and troubled. Good. Maybe she would remember this moment later. Maybe it would matter. The last thing Jake saw before they dragged him from the reactor room was the blue glow of the power systems he had almost destroyed. He had not rescued Amy, but he had learned something important. The alliance between elves and aliens was not as strong as they wanted everyone to believe, and sometimes that was enough to start with. Jake woke up in a metal cage barely big enough for him to stand. His head hurt and his mouth tasted like blood. The walls around him were dark green and covered with strange symbols that seemed to move when he was not looking directly at them. The ship was different from the mining station. Everything here felt older and more dangerous. The air smelled like sulfur and machine oil. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the sound of large engines working. You are awake, a voice said from the next cage. Jake turned and saw a woman with short black hair and tired eyes. She wore a torn lab coat over dirty clothes. Despite everything, She sat straight and looked at him with intelligence and strength. "Dr. Kira Blackwood," she said, "and you must be the crazy human who almost blew up the reactor." "Jake Morrison," he replied. "Crazy is probably accurate." Kira smiled for the first time in what looked like weeks. "They brought you to the Bone Crusher. This is the flagship of General Seth, the leader of the Saurian military. We are in deep trouble." Jake looked around their prison. The cages were arranged in a circle around a central area filled with torture devices and computer screens. Everything was designed to break the human spirit through fear and pain. "How long have you been here?" Jake asked. 3 months, Kira said. "They captured me when they attacked the research station on Europa. They want me to build weapons that work specifically against human biology." "And do you?" Kira's eyes got hard. "I build things that look like weapons, but do not work very well. It takes them weeks to figure out each failure. Then they punish me and make me start over." Jake felt respect for this woman. She was fighting back in her own way, using her intelligence as a weapon against their captors. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. The door opened with a sound like breaking bones. Commander Vexthara entered, followed by 2 smaller Saurian soldiers. The alien was even bigger than Jake remembered, with scales that looked like armor and yellow eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. Behind the aliens came Lirelei. She looked different now, more formal and cold. But Jake noticed she would not meet his eyes. "The famous Jake Morrison," Vexthara said in English that sounded like rocks grinding together. "The human who thinks he can fight the Dominion." "I do not think I can fight you," Jake said. "I know I can." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your confidence is amusing. Let us see how long it lasts." They dragged Jake from his cage to a chair in the center of the room. Metal bands locked around his arms and legs. Vexthara stood in front of him while Lirelei watched from the side. "We know you work for the human resistance," the alien said. "Tell us the location of their bases." "I work for myself," Jake said. "Always have." Vexthara nodded to one of the soldiers. Pain shot through Jake's body as electricity flowed through the chair. He gritted his teeth and waited for it to stop. "The human military codes," Vexthara said. "Give them to us." "Sorry," Jake gasped. "I never got the memo. More electricity." This time Jake bit his tongue to keep from screaming. He could taste blood, but he did not break. "Your species is weak," Vexthara said. "You will tell us everything before we are finished." The interrogation went on for hours. They asked about military bases, resistance leaders, and human technology. Jake answered with jokes, movie quotes, and song lyrics. Nothing useful, but everything delivered with a smile that seemed to make Vexthara angrier. Why do you not simply read his mind? The alien asked Lirelei during a break. The elf looked uncomfortable. Human minds are difficult. Their thoughts are chaotic and unpredictable. It would take days to sort through the noise. "Then we do this the old way," Vexthara said. When they brought Jake back to his cage, Kira was waiting with water and a piece of cloth to clean his wounds. "You are either very brave or very stupid," she said quietly. "Probably both," Jake admitted. "But I learned something important while they were frying me." "What?" "They need information from us. That means the human resistance is giving them real problems." Jake winced as Kira cleaned a cut on his forehead. "And did you see how the elf and the alien barely talk to each other? They do not trust each other." Kira thought about this. "The elves think they are better than everyone else. They see the Saurians as useful, but primitive. The aliens know this and hate them for it." "Exactly," Jake said. "We can use that." The next day brought a new interrogator. General Seth himself came to the prison. He was ancient even by Saurian standards, with scars covering his scales and eyes that had seen 1,000 battles. "I have been fighting for 300 years, the general told Jake. "I have conquered 12 worlds and destroyed countless enemies. You humans are nothing special." "That is where you are wrong," Jake said. "We are very special." "We are too. Stupid to know when we are beaten." Seth stared at him for a long moment. "Your world will burn. Your people will serve us or die. There is no other choice. See, that is your problem," Jake said. "You think there are only two choices. Humans always find a third option." During the interrogation that followed, Jake began to plant seeds of doubt. He talked about secret human weapons that did not exist. He mentioned alliance between humans and other alien species that were completely made up. He spoke about internal fighting among human leaders, giving names and details that sounded real but were total fiction. Most importantly, he started to suggest that the elves were planning to betray their Saurian allies. "The pointy-eared princess over there probably has not told you about the deal she made with Human Command," Jake said during one session. "Smart move on her part. When this war is over, the elves will need new allies." Vexthara looked at Lirelei with suspicion. "What? Deal? There is no deal," Lirelei said quickly. "The human is lying." "Of course she would say that," Jake said with a shrug. "The question is, do you really trust her?" Jake could see the doubt growing in the alien's mind. The Saurians had always been suspicious of their elf partners. Now that suspicion had a target. Over the following days, Jake continued his psychological warfare. He told different stories to different interrogators, making sure the details never quite matched. He acted like he was breaking down under the pressure, giving them information that seemed valuable, but was actually designed to make them paranoid. The elves and aliens started watching each other more carefully. Conversations became tense. Jake could see the alliance starting to crack, but the cost was high. The torture sessions got worse as his captors became more desperate for real information. Jake's body was covered with burns and cuts. Several times, he almost passed out from the pain. "You cannot keep this up forever," Kira told him one night. "I do not need forever," Jake said. "I just need long enough." "Long enough for what?" Jake smiled despite his injuries. "Long enough for them to start fighting each other instead of us." The breakthrough came during his 8th interrogation. Vexthara accused Lirelei of holding back information about human defenses. Lirelei accused the alien of being too stupid to understand elf intelligence methods. Their argument grew heated. "Perhaps," Jake said from his chair, "you should ask yourselves why you are fighting over information from someone you claim is already defeated." Both of them turned to look at him. In that moment, Jake saw something that gave him hope. They were starting to realize that their prisoner was not as helpless as they thought. "The human resistance is not your biggest problem," Jake continued. "Your biggest problem is that you do not trust each other. And you are right not to trust each other." Vexthara's claws extended. "Enough games. Tell us what we want to know, or watch a friend die." The alien gestured toward Kira's cage. 2 soldiers moved toward her with weapons drawn. For the first time since his capture, Jake felt real fear. Not for himself, but for the brave woman who had been fighting this war in her own way for months. "Wait," Jake said. "Let me tell you about the real human plan." Vexthara smiled, thinking he had finally broken his prisoner. Lirelei watched carefully, her face showing no emotion. Jake began to speak, weaving a story that was part truth and part fiction. He told them about a massive human fleet that was preparing to attack. He gave them dates and locations that would send their forces to empty space. Most importantly, he convinced them that the attack would come from a direction they would never expect. As he talked, Jake watched their faces. Vexthara believed every word. Lirelei looked troubled, as if she suspected something, but could not figure out what. When Jake finished his story, the room was quiet for a long moment. "If this is true," Dexthara said slowly, "we must prepare our defenses immediately." "If this is true," Lirelei said, "then we have been wasting time with interrogations instead of preparing for battle." They left Jake alone, arguing with each other as they walked away. In his cage, Kira looked at him with new respect. "What did you just do?" she asked. "I gave them exactly what they wanted," Jake said. "A reason to panic." The journey to the Saurian homeworld took 3 days. Jake spent most of that time in his cage, pretending to be a broken man who had given up hope. It was not hard to act defeated when his body hurt everywhere, and he had not eaten a real meal in weeks. But inside his mind, Jake was planning. Every guard rotation, every security check, every conversation between his captors gave him more information. The ship was huge, but it had weaknesses. More importantly, the crew was nervous. His fake intelligence about the human fleet had worked better than he hoped. Alien soldiers ran through the corridors preparing weapons and checking systems. Officers shouted orders in their harsh language. Everyone seemed to expect an attack at any moment. "They are scared," Kira whispered during one of their brief conversations. "Good," Jake replied. "Scared people make mistakes." Dr. Blackwood had been moved to a different part of the ship. Jake only saw her during the daily exercise period, when all prisoners were allowed to walk in a small room under heavy guard. She looked thinner than before, but her eyes still burned with intelligence and defiance. "They want me to examine you," she told Jake during one exercise session, "to make sure you are healthy enough for the execution." "What did you tell them?" "That you are dying slowly from internal injuries," Kira said with a slight smile. "It should buy us some time," but time was running out. Through the small windows in their prison, Jake could see they were getting close to the Saurian homeworld. The planet looked like a giant red rock, covered with cities that glowed like scars in the darkness. Elder Thranduil Starseeker arrived on the ship just before they entered orbit. Jake had heard of him from intelligence reports, back when he still worked with human military. The elf was old, even by their standards, and supposedly one of their greatest. Diplomats. Jake watched through the bars of his cage as Thranduil met with General Seth and Commander Vexthara. The 3 leaders spoke in quiet voices, but Jake could see tension in their body language. The elf kept looking toward the prison area with an expression Jake could not read. Why would they send their top diplomat for a simple execution? Jake wondered aloud. "Maybe it is not so simple," Kira said. That night, Lirelei came to see Jake alone. She stood outside his cage for several minutes without speaking, her silver hair catching the dim light from the corridor. "You have been lying to us," she said. "Finally." "About what?" Jake asked, though he kept his voice weak and tired. "The human fleet, the attack plans, all of it." Lirelei moved closer to the bars. "I have been thinking about our conversation in the reactor room. You saved lives that day, including mine. That is not something a desperate man does." Jake met her eyes. "Maybe I am just crazy." "No," the elf said quietly. "You are something much more dangerous than crazy. You are smart." They stared at each other through the metal bars. Jake could see conflict in her face, as if she was fighting with herself about something important. "Why are you telling me this?" Jake asked. "Because tomorrow you die," Lirelei said, "and I am the one who has to kill you." Before Jake could respond, she walked away, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. The next morning, they came for him early. Jake was given clean clothes and a meal that was almost good enough to be his last. 2 guards escorted him through the ship to a transport vehicle that would take him to the surface dot as they flew toward the planet. Jake got his first good look at the Saurian homeworld. Cities stretched as far as he could see, connected by roads that looked like veins across the red landscape. In the center of the largest city was a massive arena that could hold hundreds of thousands of spectators. The Colosseum of Dominance, one of the guards explained in broken English, where enemies of the Dominion meet their end. The arena was already filling with aliens when they arrived. Saurians of all sizes packed the seats, their scales reflecting the light from giant screens that showed Jake's face and information about his crimes. The noise was incredible, like the roar of some giant beast. Jake was taken to a holding cell beneath the arena floor. Through the walls, he could hear the crowd getting louder and more excited. Somewhere above him, he knew cameras were broadcasting this event to human colonies across the galaxy. It had been his real plan all along. Not to escape, but to be seen. To show other humans that even when everything seemed hopeless, they should never give up fighting. Maya Singh was watching. He was sure of it. The leader of the human resistance would use this broadcast to rally people across human space. Jake's death would hurt, but his defiance would inspire thousands more to take his place. Commander, Vexthara came to see him one last time before the execution. Any final words for your people? The alien asked, gesturing toward a camera that had been set up in the cell. Jake looked directly into the lens. He thought about Amy Rodriguez, still trapped somewhere in alien space. He thought about Dr. Blackwood and all the other humans who were suffering while he sat in this cell. He thought about his sister back on Earth, who would probably cry when she heard about his death. Yeah, Jake said to the camera. I have something to say? He stood up as straight as he could manage and spoke in a clear, strong voice that carried all the way to the microphones. To every human watching this, remember something important. They can kill us, but they cannot break us. They can take our homes, but they cannot take our hope. And no matter how dark things get, we never stop fighting. Never. Vexthara switched off the camera with obvious disgust. Inspiring words for a dead man. We will see, Jake said. The crowd noise reached a new level of excitement when Jake was brought up to the arena floor. The place was enormous, big enough to hold a small city. Every seat was filled with aliens who had come to watch a human die. In the center of the arena was a raised platform surrounded by cameras and recording equipment. This execution was being broadcast live to every corner of the galaxy. The aliens wanted everyone to see what happened to those who opposed them. Jake walked to the platform with his head held high. His hands were chained behind his back, but he moved like a man going to receive an award instead of facing death. The crowd seemed confused by his confidence. General Seth stood at one side of the platform wearing ceremonial armor that looked like it was made from the bones of his enemies. Elder Thranduil was there too, his face showing no emotion as he watched the proceedings. But it was Lirale who held Jake's attention. She stood in the center of the platform, wearing black robes that made her look like death itself. In her hands were the ceremonial execution claws, curved blades that gleamed in the arena lights. Citizens of the Dominion, General Seath's voice boomed across the arena through hidden speakers. Today we show the galaxy what happens to those who dare oppose us. The crowd roared its approval. Jake looked up at the thousands of alien faces, staring down at him with hate and bloodlust. He had never felt so alone. But then he remembered something important. Somewhere out in space, Maya Singh and her rebels were watching this broadcast. On Earth and Mars and dozens of other human worlds, people were seeing this moment. He was not alone. He was the voice of everyone who refused to surrender. The human Jake Morrison has committed crimes against the Dominion, Seth continued. He has killed our soldiers and destroyed our property. He has spread lies and tried to turn our allies against us. Jake almost smiled at that last part. His lies had worked better than he hoped. Even now, He could see suspicious looks passing between elf and alien officials. For these crimes, Seth said, he will die according to our ancient traditions. The general gestured toward Lirelei. Lirelei, Moon Whisperer of the Zephyrian Empire, will carry out the sentence. As is custom, the prisoner may speak final words. The arena fell silent. Hundreds of thousands of aliens waited to hear what Jake Morrison would say before he died. Lirelei approached him slowly, her claws ready but not yet raised. She stopped just in front of him and looked into his eyes. For a moment, Jake saw something unexpected in her face. Doubt, maybe even regret. "Last wish?" she asked quietly, so only he could hear. Jake looked at her, then at the crowd, then at the cameras that were broadcasting this moment across the galaxy. He thought about every human who would see this, every person who needed to believe that their species could not be broken. He smiled, and his voice carried clearly across the silent. "Arena, yes," Jake said. "Try with both hands next time." For 3 seconds, the arena was completely silent. 200,000 alien spectators stared at the human who had just insulted his executioner at the moment of death. Even the cameras seemed to pause, as if the operators could not believe what they had heard. Then Jake Morrison winked at Lirelei Moonwhisper. The crowd exploded. Some aliens roared with anger at his disrespect. Others made sounds that might have been laughter at his boldness. General Seth looked like he wanted to tear Jake apart with his bare claws, but Lirelei just stared at Jake with something that looked almost like admiration. "You are insane," she said quietly. "Probably," Jake agreed, "but I am not wrong." Before anyone could react to this exchange, the first explosion shook the arena. The blast came from somewhere deep beneath the floor, sending vibrations through the massive structure. Emergency lights began flashing as dust and debris fell from the ceiling. Jake had been busy during his 3 days on the ship. Every time they moved him for interrogation or medical checks, he had left small gifts behind. Tiny devices disguised as buttons from his clothes, pieces of metal that looked like broken jewelry, even his own tooth that he had deliberately loosened and left in the medical bay. Each device was small and harmless by itself, but when activated together by a simple radio signal, they created a chain reaction that could cripple even a massive warship. The second explosion was bigger. This one came from the bone crusher in orbit above them, where Jake had planted his most important surprise. The lights in the arena flickered as power systems failed. "What is happening?" General Seth shouted over the noise of panicking spectators. The answer came from Commander Vex Thara, who was listening to reports through a communication device. His face had gone pale beneath his scales. "The flagship is losing power," he reported. "Multiple systems are failing. The engineering crews think it might be sabotage." "Impossible," Seth said. "Our security is perfect." Jake laughed, and the sound carried clearly over the arena's speaker system because his microphone was still active. "Nothing is perfect," he said, echoing his words from the mining station, "especially when you underestimate humans." The third explosion was the biggest yet. This one came from the arena's own power systems, which Jake had sabotaged during his brief walk through the maintenance areas. The main lights went out, leaving only emergency illumination in the chaos that followed. Something remarkable happened. Instead of panicking, Jake felt a strange sense of peace. He had done what he came to do. Across the galaxy, humans were watching him face death without fear. That image would be worth more than any rescue. But Lirelei was not thinking about symbolic victories. As alien guards rushed around trying to restore order, she made a decision that would change everything. She cut Jake's chains. "What are you doing?" he asked as the metal fell away from his wrists. "Something stupid," she said. "Just like you." More explosions echoed from the city around them. Jake's sabotage had spread beyond the ship and arena to affect power grids and IT communication networks across the planet. The aliens had built their systems to be efficient, but that efficiency made them vulnerable to someone who understood how to make things explode in the right order. "The human fleet," General Seth said, his voice filled with panic. "This is the attack he warned us about." "There is no fleet," Lirelei said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Can you not see? He did this alone." The crowd was trying to leave now, but the exits were blocked by debris and failing security systems. Alien officials ran in different directions, shouting contradictory orders. The perfect execution had become a disaster broadcast live to the entire galaxy. "We need to get out of here," Jake said to Lirelei as chunks of ceiling began falling around them. "I know a way," she said. "But first we need to get your friend. Kira is here?" "They brought her to watch your execution," Lirelei explained as they ran toward an exit. Standard procedure for important prisoners. They found Dr. Blackwood in a holding area beneath the arena, guarded by two aliens who were more concerned with the explosions than watching their prisoner. Lirelei dealt with them quickly and quietly. "Jake?" Kira could not hide her amazement. "How are you still alive?" "Long story," Jake said. "Right now we need to move." Lirelei led them through maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the arena. The passages were dark and filled with smoke from the various fires that Jake's explosions had started. "Why are you helping us?" Kira asked the elf as they climbed through a ventilation shaft. "Because he was right," Lirelei said. "About everything. The Alliance, the war, all of it." They emerged from the tunnels into the city streets, where chaos ruled. Alien civilians ran in panic as buildings lost power and transportation systems failed. In the sky above, they could see the bone crusher listing to one side as explosions continued to rock the massive ship. "The spaceport is 2 kilometers north," Lirelei said. "If we can get there, I know where they keep the small ships." As they ran through the streets, Jake saw something that made him smile. On every screen that still had power, his image was being broadcast. Not the moment of his death, but his defiant words and fearless smile. The aliens had wanted to show the galaxy a broken human, but instead they were showing them an unbreakable one. "Look," Kira said, pointing to a large screen on the side of a building. The screen showed a news report from human space. Maya Singh stood at a podium, her face filled with fierce pride. "Today we have seen what it means to be human." Singh's voice carried over the alien emergency broadcasts. "Jake Morrison has shown the galaxy that we cannot be intimidated. We cannot be broken, and we will never surrender." Behind her, Jake could see crowds of humans cheering and waving flags. His sacrifice had worked. The human resistance was growing stronger, not weaker. "We need to hurry," Lirelei said. "They will send troops to secure the spaceport soon." But as they reached the edge of the government district, they found their path blocked by a squad of Saurian soldiers. The aliens had weapons raised and looked ready to shoot anything that moved. "Stop right there," the squad leader shouted. "By order of General Seth, all movement in this area is forbidden." Jake looked at Lirelei and Kira. They were trapped between armed soldiers and a burning city. The explosions had stopped, but sirens wailed from every direction as emergency crews tried to deal with the damage. "Any ideas?" Jake asked. Lirelei smiled, and for the first time since he met her, it looked genuinely happy. "Yes," she said. "Try with both hands." Before Jake could ask what she meant, the elf drew both of her energy blades and charged toward the soldiers. But instead of attacking them, she leaped over their heads and landed behind them. The aliens spun around to face this new threat, but that gave Jake and Kira the opening they needed. Jake grabbed a piece of debris and threw it at the nearest soldier, while Kira found an emergency fire suppression system and activated it. Filling the street with foam and smoke. In the confusion, all three of them escaped into the maze of side streets that led toward the spaceport. That was your plan? Jake asked as they ran. It worked, did it not? Lirelei replied. They could see the spaceport ahead when the next crisis hit. Elder Thranduil's Starseeker stepped out of a building directly. In front of them, flanked by elf guards, who looked much more dangerous than the Saurian soldiers. Lirelei, the elder said in a voice like winter wind, "You have disgraced our people." "I have saved our people," she replied. "This war will destroy us all. The alliance with the Dominion is necessary for our survival. The alliance is built on lies and fear," Jake said, stepping forward. "And now it is falling apart." Thranduil looked at him with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. "You are the human who started all of this trouble," the elder said. "Your death will restore order." "My death will change nothing," Jake said. "The idea of freedom cannot be killed." For a moment, the two groups faced each other in the street, while the city burned around them. Then Thranduil made a gesture, and his guards raised their weapons. "Goodbye, Jake Morrison," the elder said. But before anyone could fire, the sky lit up with new explosions. These were not Jake's sabotage devices. These were ships firing on each other in orbit above the planet. "The human fleet has arrived." One of the elf guards reported. Jake looked up at the battle in space and grinned. "No," he said, "that is not a human fleet. That is Saurians and elves shooting at each other." The alliance was breaking apart, exactly as he had planned. His fake intelligence and psychological warfare had finally pushed the two species into open conflict. In the confusion of this realization, Lirelei grabbed Jake and Kira and pulled them toward a small ship that was parked nearby. "This belongs to me," she said as they climbed aboard. "A gift from the Dominion for my loyal service." As the ship lifted off, Jake took one last look at the alien homeworld. The great arena was on fire, the capital city was in chaos, and in space above them, former allies were destroying each other. "Where are we going?" Kira asked. Jake thought about Amy Rodriguez, still trapped somewhere in alien space. He thought about all the other humans who needed rescue. He thought about the war that was just beginning. "We are going to finish what we started," he said. The ship flew through space, while behind them the Saurian homeworld burned. Jake watched through the rear window as explosions lit up the planet's surface. The alliance between elves and aliens was destroying itself, just as he had hoped. "The communication channels are full of reports," Lirelei said from the pilot's seat. "Saurian and elf ships are fighting each other across 12 star systems." "How bad is it?" Kira asked. "Complete breakdown of military cooperation," Lirelei replied. "Each side blames the other for the security failures. General Seth has accused the elves of sabotage. Elder Thranduil claims the Saurians are incompetent." Jake smiled as he listened to the radio chatter. Months of careful psychological warfare had finally paid off. The two species had never really trusted each other, and his fake intelligence had given them reasons to act on that distrust. "Where are we heading?" he asked. "The asteroid belt near Kepler 7, Lirelei said. "I know of a hidden station there. We can regroup and plan our next move." As they traveled, Jake learned more about what his escape had accomplished. The broadcast of his defiant words had spread across human space faster than any government could stop it. Maya Singh was leading massive protests on Earth and Mars. Human colonies that had surrendered to alien rule were starting to fight back. But the most important change was happening among the aliens themselves. Young Saurians who had watched Jake face death without fear were beginning to question their leaders. Some elf military units had refused orders to attack human civilians. "Your species has a strange power," Lirelei told Jake during one of their conversations. You make others want to be brave like you. We do not make anyone do anything, Jake said. We just show them that being brave is possible. The hidden station turned out to be an old mining platform that had been abandoned for decades, but someone had been using it recently. The docking bay was clean, and the life support systems were working. "Welcome to the Resistance," a familiar voice said as they entered the main corridor. Amy Rodriguez stood there with a smile on her face and a weapon in her hands. Behind her were dozens of humans, elves, and even a few young Saurians who had chosen to fight against their own governments. "Amy," Jake said, hardly believing his eyes. "How did you escape?" "After you were captured, some of the elf guards started having doubts about what they were doing," Amy explained. "A few of them helped us break out. We have been building this alliance ever since." She led them to the main command center, where screens showed the chaos spreading across the galaxy. The alien-elf war was growing worse by the hour. Supply lines were breaking down. Military units were switching sides or simply refusing to fight. "Your little stunt on the homeworld was the final push we needed," Amy said. "Both sides are so busy fighting each other that they cannot focus on controlling human space." Jake looked around the command center and saw something that gave him hope. Humans worked alongside elves and aliens, all united by the belief that the war was wrong. This was what he had dreamed of during those long days in prison. "What is our next mission?" he asked. "Rescue operations," Amy said. "There are still thousands of humans trapped in alien facilities. With the Alliance falling apart, now is our best chance to get them out." Over the following weeks, Jake led mission after mission into enemy territory. Each rescue was broadcast live to show the galaxy that the Resistance was growing stronger. More importantly, each mission proved that different species could work together when they chose cooperation over conquest. Dr. Blackwood set up a medical facility on the station to treat rescued prisoners. Lirelei trained former enemies to fight as allies. Even some of the young Saurians proved to be valuable team members once they learned to control their natural aggression. The turning point came when Captain Lisa Walsh arrived with a human fleet. Jake expected her to demand that he return to human space for debriefing and medical treatment. Instead, she surprised him. "The brass wants you to come home and be a hero," Walsh said. "Medals, parades, the whole thing." But Jake could hear there was more. "But I think you are doing more good out here," the captain said. "This multicultural resistance of yours is changing how the galaxy thinks about war and peace." Jake looked around the station that had become his new home. Human engineers worked with elf technicians to repair damaged ships. Saurian warriors taught human soldiers new fighting techniques. Former prisoners became teachers and leaders. "We are not trying to win a war," Jake told Captain Walsh. "We are trying to end one." The final test came when General Seth himself arrived at the station. The old Saurian came not with an army, but with a small diplomatic ship flying a flag of truce. "I want to speak with Jake Morrison," the general announced over the communication system. Jake met him in the docking bay, flanked by Lirelei and Amy. The alien leader looked older and more tired than before. "You have destroyed everything I spent my life building," Seth said. "I gave you a choice," Jake replied. "You could have chosen peace. And now, what happens now?" Jake thought about that question. The galaxy was changing. The old alliances were dead, but new ones were being born. Humans had proven they could not be broken, but more importantly, they had shown others how to be unbreakable too. "Now we build something better," Jake said. "Together." 6 months later, Jake stood in the same asteroid belt where his adventure had begun. But everything was different now. The mining station had been converted into a peaceful research facility where humans, elves, and Saurians worked together to explore the galaxy. Amy Rodriguez ran the engineering department. Dr. Blackwood led medical research that helped all species. Even some former enemies had joined the project, choosing cooperation over conquest. Lirelai found Jake in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Any regrets? She asked. Jake thought about his decision to stay in space instead of returning to Earth as a hero. He thought about the comfortable life he could have had and the dangerous missions that still lay ahead. None, he said. This is where I belong. Even though you will probably die out here eventually? Jake laughed. We all die eventually. The question is what we do with the time we have. A new alarm sounded through the station. Another distress call from humans trapped somewhere in the galaxy. Another impossible rescue mission that would probably get them all killed. Ready for another adventure? Lirelai asked. Jake checked his equipment and headed for the hangar where their ship was waiting. Amy and Kira were already there, along with a mixed crew of humans, elves, and saurians who had all chosen to fight for something bigger than their own species. Remember, Jake told his team as they prepared for launch, when someone asks if you have any last words, make sure they count. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, Jake thought about the message they were sending to the galaxy. No one was beyond redemption. No cause was truly hopeless. And sometimes, the best way to win a war was to refuse to fight it the way your enemies expected. The resistance had become something greater than anyone imagined. Not just humans fighting for freedom, but all species working together to build a better future. And it had all started with one simple truth that Jake Morrison had proven in front of 200,000 alien spectators. Sometimes, when someone points a weapon at you and asks for your last words, the right answer is not surrender. The right answer is defiance. The right answer is hope. The right answer is to show them that no matter how many times they knock you down, humans always get back up. And sometimes, if you are very lucky and very stubborn, you inspire others to get back up with you. The galaxy was a big place, full of beings who had forgotten how to dream of something better. But Jake Morrison and his unlikely alliance were going to remind them, one rescue mission at a time. After all, humans had always been good at finding the third option when everyone else saw only two choices. They had found it again.